Throughout human history, civilizations have risen and fallen, leaving behind mysteries that challenge everything we think we know about our past. Tonight we embark on a journey through time, exploring the enigmas that have puzzled archaeologists, historians, and scientists for centuries, from the lost city of Atlantis to the impossible precision of the Great Pyramid. From ancient technologies that rival our modern world to structures that defy explanation, we'll examine the evidence, consider the theories, and ask the questions that remain unanswered. So settle in, relax, and prepare to discover the hidden history of humanity. This is Echoes of the Ancients. Our journey begins in 360 BCE in the philosophical schools of ancient Athens. Here the renowned philosopher Plato penned dialogues that would spark a mystery lasting over 2 millennia, Timaeus and Critias. In these works, Plato describes a powerful island nation called Atlantis, located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, the ancient name for the Strait of Gibraltar. According to his account, this civilization existed 9,000 years before his own time, placing it around 9600 BCE. Atlantis, Plato wrote, was larger than Libya and Asia Minor combined. The island was blessed with abundant natural resources, precious metals, exotic woods, and fertile soil that produced crops twice yearly. At its heart lay a magnificent capital city, designed in a pattern of concentric rings, alternating bands of land and water. The royal palace stood at the very center, on a hill surrounded by rings of water. These canals were wide enough for ships to sail through, connecting the inner city to the sea. Bridges spanned the waterways, and a great canal cut through the rings, allowing vessels to reach the palace itself. The architecture was breathtaking. Temples covered in silver and gold, with pinnacles of precious metals that caught the sunlight. The walls themselves were constructed of red, white, and black stone, creating a striking visual display. One temple, dedicated to the sea god Poseidon, contained a massive gold statue of the deity, standing in a chariot pulled by winged horses. But Atlantis was more than beautiful. It was technologically advanced. The Atlanteans engineered sophisticated irrigation systems, built elaborate harbors, and constructed a naval force that dominated the Mediterranean. Their ships were swift and powerful, capable of projecting military force across vast distances. The royal palace featured hot and cold running water, a luxury that wouldn't reappear in European civilization for another 2,000 years. They built public baths, gymnasiums, and racecourses. The city was a marvel of urban planning, with wide streets, public gardens, and a sophisticated infrastructure. The Atlantean military was formidable. Plato describes an army of 10,000 chariots, 1,200 ships, and hundreds of thousands of soldiers. They established colonies throughout the Mediterranean and North Africa, creating an empire that stretched from Egypt to Italy. But power corrupted the Atlanteans. Initially virtuous and wise, they gradually became arrogant and aggressive. They launched an invasion of the Mediterranean, attempting to conquer Athens and Egypt simultaneously. The Athenians, despite being vastly outnumbered, managed to defeat the Atlantean forces through superior strategy and courage. The gods, however, had witnessed the moral decline of Atlantis. Zeus, king of the gods, called a council to determine the civilization's fate. What followed was catastrophic. In a single day and night of unprecedented disaster, violent earthquakes shook the island. The ground split open. Massive floods swept across the land. The entire island of Atlantis, along with its armies, its cities, and its people, sank beneath the waves of the Atlantic Ocean. The sea above became impassable, choked with mud from the sunken island, and thus, according to Plato, ended the most advanced civilization the ancient world had ever known. Or was this merely a philosophical allegory? Plato claimed the story came from his ancestor Solon, a respected Athenian statesman who had visited Egypt around 590 BCE. Egyptian priests, with their meticulous historical records spanning thousands of years, had shared the account with Solon. Plato insisted the story was true, not fiction. He emphasized this point repeatedly in his dialogues. Yet for over 2,000 years, scholars dismissed Atlantis as pure invention, a moral tale about the dangers of imperial ambition and divine retribution. Recent discoveries, however, have forced us to reconsider. In 1923, an American mystic named Edgar Cayce began making extraordinary claims about Atlantis, known as the Sleeping Prophet. Cayce would enter deep trance states and provide detailed readings on various subjects, including the lost civilization. Over 4 decades, Cayce gave more than 14,000 readings while in trance. Nearly 700 of these mentioned Atlantis, providing specific details about its technology, culture, and destruction. According to Cayce's visions, Atlantis was far more advanced than Plato had described. The Atlanteans possessed aircraft, used crystal technology for power generation, and had developed sophisticated energy weapons. They understood genetics and performed what Cayce called thought form projection, manipulating matter with consciousness. Cayce described 3 major catastrophes that befell Atlantis, not just one. The first occurred around 50,000 BCE, when misuse of powerful crystal technology caused massive explosions. The second happened around 28,000 BCE, further fragmenting the continent. The final destruction came in 10,000 BCE, close to Plato's timeline, when the remaining islands sank beneath the Atlantic. Most intriguingly, Case made a specific prediction in 1940. He stated that portions of Atlantis would begin to appear near Bimini in the Bahamas in 1968 or 1969. He described underwater ruins that would be discovered off the coast of these islands. Skeptics dismissed this as fantasy. But then, in September 1968, something remarkable happened. A pilot flying over the Bahamas noticed unusual formations in the shallow waters near Bimini. When divers investigated, they discovered what appeared to be a massive underwater road or wall. Enormous rectangular stones arranged in a linear pattern stretching for nearly half a mile. The Bimini Road, as it became known, consists of limestone blocks, some weighing several tons. The stones are remarkably uniform in size and shape, arranged in what appears to be a deliberate pattern. Some blocks show evidence of tool marks and right-angle cuts. Geologists initially claimed these were natural beach rock formations, but further investigation revealed puzzling details. The blocks rest on smaller stones, as if deliberately supported. Some stones show evidence of having been moved from their original location. The arrangement is too uniform to be entirely natural. Carbon dating of material found beneath the stone suggested they were submerged around 10,000 BCE, exactly when Kay said the final remnants of Atlantis sank. The timing of the discovery, just months after Kay's predicted date, was eerily accurate. But the Bimini Road is just one of many underwater anomalies in the area. Divers have reported other structures nearby, what appear to be foundation walls, pillar stumps, and even a possible harbor. Sonar surveys have detected geometric patterns on the seafloor that don't match natural geological formations. Kay's readings also described Atlantean colonies in Egypt, Central America, and the Mediterranean. He claimed the Great Pyramid was built by Atlantean refugees who fled the final catastrophe. These survivors, he said, brought their advanced knowledge to primitive cultures, jump-starting civilization in multiple locations. This would explain why similar architectural styles, astronomical knowledge, and cultural practices appear in ancient civilizations separated by vast oceans. The pyramid-building cultures of Egypt, Mexico, and Peru all emerged around the same time period. Shortly after 10,000 BCE, Case described Atlantean Hall of Records, repositories of their knowledge hidden in 3 locations, near the Sphinx in Egypt, in the Yucatan Peninsula, and near Bimini. These chambers, he claimed, contain crystals that store information about Atlantean technology and history. While no such chambers have been definitively found, ground-penetrating radar has detected anomalies beneath the Sphinx that suggest hollow spaces. The Egyptian government has been reluctant to authorize excavation, citing concerns about damaging the monument. Critics argue that Case's readings were vague enough to fit any discovery, and that the Bimini Road is simply an unusual natural formation. They point out that limestone can fracture in geometric patterns under certain conditions, yet the precision of Case's 1968 prediction, made nearly 3 decades earlier, remains difficult to dismiss. Whether the Bimini structures are natural or artificial, their discovery exactly when and where Case said they would appear is a remarkable coincidence. Some researchers suggest Case tapped into a collective unconscious, accessing genuine historical memories embedded in human consciousness. Others believe he possessed genuine psychic abilities. Skeptics maintained he made lucky guesses based on Plato's account. What cannot be disputed is that Case's readings inspired serious archaeological investigation in the Bahamas. Without his prediction, the Bimini Road might never have been noticed or studied. As we drift deeper into this mystery, consider the possibility that Case's visions, however fantastical they may seem, contain fragments of forgotten truth. Back in 1967, on the Greek island of Santorini, also known as Thirk, an archaeologist named Spiridon Marinatos made a discovery that would change everything we thought we knew about ancient disasters. It might even hold the key to unlocking the truth behind Plato's Atlantis. He dug 15 meters down, through layers of volcanic ash, and found a city. Not just any city, but the perfectly preserved remains of Akrotiri, just like Pompeii. Akrotiri was frozen in time, buried in an instant by a volcanic eruption over 3,600 years ago. But this was no simple Bronze Age village. Akrotiri was an advanced urban center. Imagine multi-story buildings, sophisticated plumbing systems, and art so beautiful it takes your breath away. They had indoor toilets with running water, technology that Europe wouldn't see again for thousands of years. The walls were covered in vibrant frescoes, painting a picture of a wealthy, thriving maritime culture. We see elaborate ships sailing on painted seas, and exotic animals like monkeys and antelopes decorating the rooms. The people in these paintings, the women in their elegant dresses and jewelry, tell a story of refinement and widespread trade, and the trade was massive. Huge clay jars, called pithoi, were found in storage rooms. They once held olive oil, wine, and grain on a commercial scale. Chemical analysis even found residues of goods from all across the Mediterranean, proving this was a far-reaching economic powerhouse. So what happened to this incredible civilization? Around 1600 BCE, the Thera volcano erupted with unimaginable force. Geologists believe the explosion was 4 times more powerful than the famous Krakatoa eruption of 1883, which killed 36,000 people. The Thera eruption shot an estimated 60 cubic kilometers of rock and ash straight into the atmosphere. The sound would have been heard across the entire Mediterranean. Ash fell as far away as Egypt and Turkey. The sky went dark for days, maybe even weeks, causing a volcanic winter that led to widespread crop failures. But the eruption was just the beginning. As the magma chamber under the volcano emptied, the entire center of the island collapsed into the sea, forming the massive caldera we see today. This sudden collapse created gigantic tsunamis. Computer models suggest waves over 100 feet high smashed into the surrounding coastlines. Within 30 minutes, these waves hit the northern coast of Crete, the heart of Minoan civilization. Coastal cities were completely wiped out, harbors were demolished, and the mighty Minoan fleet, the source of their power, was annihilated. We've found evidence of these tsunamis all over the Mediterranean, in Turkey, Israel, and Egypt. Geologists have discovered tsunami deposits from this exact period, layers of sand and seashells far inland, mixed with volcanic ash from Thea. The Minoan civilization never recovered. Their main palace at Knossos was damaged, but their entire economic network was shattered. Their trade routes were gone. Within a single generation, Minoan culture was in steep decline. By 1450 BCE, Mycenaean Greeks from the mainland had taken over Crete. So, could this have been Plato's Atlantis? The similarities are astonishing. Plato described an advanced island civilization with incredible architecture and a powerful navy. He said they dominated the Mediterranean through trade and military might, and he said they were destroyed suddenly by earthquakes, volcanoes, and massive floods. It all fits. Well, there is one big problem: the timeline. Plato claimed Atlantis was destroyed around 9600 BCE, which is about 8,000 years before the Thera eruption. This is why many scholars dismiss the theory. But what if there was a simple mistake? Ancient historians weren't always precise with dates, and different cultures used different calendars. Some researchers think the Egyptian priests who told the story to the Greek statesman Solon might have been misunderstood. What if they said 900 years but Solon heard 9,000? If you adjust Plato's timeline by a factor of 10, the destruction of Atlantis lands around 1500 BCE, almost a perfect match for the Thera eruption. Even the geography can be made to fit. Plato said Atlantis was beyond the Pillars of Hercules, in the Atlantic Ocean. But to ancient writers, Atlantic could mean any sea west of Greece, which includes the Aegean where Thera is located. Plato also described Atlantis as having a central island surrounded by concentric rings of land and water. After the eruption, Thera's caldera, with its circular bay and central islands, looks strikingly similar to that description. And what about the empire? The Minoans had colonies all over the Mediterranean, just like Plato described for Atlantis. They traded with Egypt, built settlements throughout the Aegean islands, and influenced cultures from Sicily to Syria. But the most compelling link is how they both vanished. Both civilizations were wiped out in a single, catastrophic event. The Theran eruption and its tsunamis happened over just a few days, perfectly matching Plato's account of destruction in a single day and night. It's possible Plato combined different historical events into one legendary story. The Thera eruption provided the dramatic ending, while the history of the powerful Minoan civilization supplied the details of an advanced maritime empire. Whether Thera was the real Atlantis or just the inspiration, it proves that entire civilizations can be wiped off the map by natural disasters. The ruins of Akrotiri show us that these sophisticated Bronze Age cultures really existed, their achievements lost for millennia until we finally dug them up. It makes you wonder if a civilization this advanced could be completely lost to history for 3,000 years. How many other forgotten worlds might still be out there waiting to be discovered? Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the past. The waters off Bimini in the Bahamas are crystal clear, shallow, and inviting. Tourists snorkel here, marveling at the tropical fish and coral reefs. But beneath these tranquil waters lies one of archaeology's most controversial discoveries. In September 1968, a pilot flying over the coast of North Bimini noticed something unusual in the shallow water below. Dark, linear patterns stretched across the seafloor, far too regular and geometric to be natural coral formations. When divers investigated, they found massive rectangular stones arranged in what looked like a road or a wall. This formation stretches for nearly half a mile, running in a remarkably straight line before curving at both ends. The individual blocks are enormous, some weighing several tons, and arranged in a pattern that suggests deliberate construction. The discovery made international headlines, especially because of a prediction made by the famous psychic Edgar Cayce 28 years earlier. Cayce had stated that parts of Atlantis would rise again near Bimini in 1968 or 1969. The timing was uncanny. Geologists quickly offered a natural explanation. They argued the formations were simply beach rock, limestone that had fractured along natural lines due to geological stress, but further investigation revealed details that challenged this simple answer. Core samples showed the blocks were made of dense limestone, different from the surrounding seafloor. Some blocks even showed what looked like tool-marked straight cuts and right angles that do untypically occur in natural fracturing. Even more intriguingly, the blocks contain microfossils from different time periods. The fossils within the blocks are older than the fossils in the material beneath them, suggesting they were quarried somewhere else and brought to this location. Radiocarbon dating of mangrove roots found under the stones indicated they were submerged around 10 to 12,000 years ago, at the end of the last ice age. This timeline perfectly matches the one case gave for Atlantis' final destruction. Dr. Greg Little, a researcher who has extensively studied the site, discovered even more structures nearby using side-scan sonar. His team mapped what appears to be a whole harbor complex, with multiple stone formations arranged in patterns that strongly suggest human construction. One formation, called the Proctor Road, runs parallel to the main Bimini Road. Together, these formations suggest a much larger complex, not just an isolated natural feature. Divers have reported finding what appear to be foundation walls, pillar stumps, and even a possible rectangular building foundation. Some stones show evidence of being shaped, with beveled edges and flat surfaces that would have required cutting tools. Critics, however, point out that no artifacts have been found nearby, no pottery, no tools, no clear evidence of human habitation. If this were an ancient road or harbor, where are the cultural remains? Supporters counter that after 10,000 years underwater, any artifacts would have been scattered by currents, buried under sediment, or simply dissolved. Organic materials like wood and cloth would have decomposed completely, and even metal tools would have corroded away. The debate intensified when one study claimed the formations were definitely natural beach rock, but other geologists have examined the site and reached different conclusions, suggesting the formations warrant much more investigation rather than a quick dismissal. One of the most compelling arguments for artificial construction is the arrangement itself. The blocks form a remarkably straight line for hundreds of meters, then curve in a way that suggests intentional design. Natural beach rock just doesn't form in such precise geometric arrangements. Plus, many of the blocks are elevated on smaller pillar stones, a feature that doesn't occur naturally. So, the Bimini Road might not be a road at all. Some researchers suggest it's a harbor wall or breakwater built to protect an ancient port from the waves. This would explain the linear arrangement and the use of massive stones that could withstand the ocean's force. If Bimini was inhabited 10,000 years ago, it would have looked dramatically different. During the Ice Age, sea levels were nearly 400 feet lower than today. What is now underwater would have been dry land. The Bahamas platform would have been a large island, possibly even connected to Florida. We know humans lived in the Americas during this period. The Clovis culture, for example, flourished in North America around 11,000 BCE. If these people built settlements near the coast, their homes and structures would now be submerged deep beneath the waves. The Bimini formations might not be Atlantis itself, but they could be. Evidence of a coastal civilization that was completely inundated when the Ice Age ended and the sea levels rose. Such a civilization would have left very few traces, with their settlements now lost to the ocean. Could the Bimini Road be the last visible remnant of a lost, prehistoric American culture, swallowed by the sea? The mystery remains, and until more conclusive evidence is found, these enigmatic stones will continue to fuel our imagination about the ancient world that might be hiding just beneath the waves. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the unknown. From the depths of the ocean, we now turn our gaze to one of Earth's most mysterious geological features, visible not from the ground, but from space. In the Sahara Desert of Mauritania lies a massive circular formation known as the Richard Structure, or the Eye of the Sahara. This enormous feature spans nearly 25 miles in diameter, so large that it can only be fully appreciated from orbit. Astronauts first noticed the Richard Structure in the 1960s during the Gemini missions. From space, it appears as a giant bullseye in the desert, a series of concentric circles alternating between ridges and valleys. The symmetry is so perfect, so geometric, that many initially assumed it must be artificial. The formation consists of multiple rings, with some estimates counting as many as 7 distinct circles. These rings are composed of different types of rock. Quartzite ridges alternate with valleys of limestone and dolomite. This alternating pattern is what creates that distinctive bullseye appearance. Geologists initially theorized the structure was an impact crater from an ancient asteroid strike. The circular shape and massive size seem consistent with such an event. However, closer examination revealed no evidence of impact shock, no shattered rock, no melted material, no iridium layer that typically accompanies extraterrestrial impacts. The current scientific consensus is that the Richard Structure is a deeply eroded geological dome. According to this theory, molten rock pushed upward from beneath the Earth's crust millions of years ago, creating a dome-shaped uplift. Over time, erosion wore away the softer rocks, leaving the harder quartzite ridges standing as concentric circles. But this explanation, while geologically sound, hasn't satisfied everyone. In 2018, researchers began proposing a radical alternative. The Richat structure is the remains of Atlantis. The comparison to Plato's description is striking. Plato described Atlantis as having concentric rings of land and water alternating in a circular pattern. The Richat structure has concentric rings of different rock types in a circular pattern. Plato said Atlantis was located on a plain near the ocean, surrounded by mountains. The Richat structure sits on a relatively flat plain in what was once a much wetter environment, with the Atlas Mountains to the north. Plato described Atlantis as having abundant precious metals and stones in red, white, and black colors. The Richat structure contains rocks in precisely these colors: red sandstone, white limestone, and black volcanic rock. Most intriguingly, the dimensions match. Plato stated that Atlantis was approximately 127 stadia in diameter, which is roughly 23.5 kilometers. The Richat structure measures approximately 24 kilometers across. The correlation is remarkable. But there is a significant problem with this theory. The Richat structure is in the middle of the Sahara Desert, hundreds of miles from the ocean. How could this be Atlantis, which Plato explicitly placed in the sea? Proponents of the Atlantis theory point to geological evidence that the Sahara was not always a desert. 10,000 years ago, during the African humid period, the region was much wetter. Rivers flowed through what is now barren sand. Lakes dotted the landscape. The area supported diverse wildlife and human populations. Ancient rock art found throughout the Sahara depicts hippos, crocodiles, and elephants, animals that require abundant water. These paintings date to a time when the Sahara was green and fertile. Could the Richat structure have been an island or peninsula in a large lake or inland sea? Some researchers suggest the structure sat at the edge of a massive body of water that has since evaporated as the climate changed. Satellite imagery has revealed ancient river channels throughout Mauritania, dried riverbeds that once carried water to and around the Richat structure. These channels suggest the area had significant water flow in the past. Additionally, marine fossils have been found in the region, indicating that parts of the Sahara were underwater in the distant past, though this was millions of years ago, long before human civilization. The Atlantis theory faces another challenge. No archaeological evidence of an advanced civilization has been found at the Richat structure. No ruins, no artifacts, no signs of the sophisticated culture Plato described. However, if a city existed here 10,000 years ago, erosion would have obliterated most traces. The Sahara is one of the harshest environments on Earth. Sandstorms can bury or scour away structures in decades. Over millennia, almost nothing would survive on the surface. Some researchers argue that excavation beneath the sand might reveal buried ruins. Ground-penetrating radar studies have detected anomalies beneath the surface. Geometric patterns that could be natural geological features or could be the foundations of ancient structures. The Mauritanian government has shown limited interest in extensive archaeological investigation. The region is remote, politically unstable, and lacks infrastructure for major research projects. The few expeditions that have explored the area focus primarily on geological rather than archaeological questions, whether the Richat structure is Atlantis, a remarkable geological coincidence, or something else entirely. It serves as a reminder of how much Earth's landscape has changed over millennia. The Sahara, now the world's largest hot desert, was once a green paradise. Civilizations could have thrived there, only to be lost when the climate shifted and the rain stopped. Their cities would now lie buried beneath endless dunes, their stories forgotten, their very existence erased by time and sand. As we gaze upon this eye in the desert, we must wonder what other lost worlds lie hidden beneath landscapes we think we know. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into the unknown. Our search for Atlantis now takes us to the most unlikely of places, the frozen continent of Antarctica. It all starts in 1929, when a German theologian discovered a remarkable map of the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, drawn on gazelle skin. It was dated 1513 and signed by an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis. The Piri Reis map showed the Atlantic, the coasts of South America, Africa, and Europe, but most mysteriously, it depicted a landmass at the very bottom of the world, a coastline that looked just like Antarctica. This should have been impossible. Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, over 300 years after Piri Reis drew his map. How could a 16th century cartographer know about a continent that was yet to be found? The mystery deepens when we look closer. The map doesn't show Antarctica as it is today, buried under miles of ice. It shows the coastline as it would look if the ice were completely gone. And here's the kicker. Modern seismic surveys of Antarctica's bedrock, conducted in the 1950s, revealed that the land underneath the ice matches the coastline on the Piri Reis map with astonishing accuracy. Piri Reis himself left clues. He wrote on the map that he compiled it from about 20 older maps, some dating back to the 4th century BCE or even earlier. He even claimed some of his sources were drawn by Alexander the Great's own cartographers. This raises a huge question. If ancient civilizations had maps of an ice-free Antarctica, they must have surveyed it before the ice formed. Geological evidence suggests Antarctica was last ice-free over 6,000 years ago, long before any known civilization had the technology for that kind of global exploration. And the Piri Reis map isn't the only one. The Orontius Phineas map of 1531 also shows Antarctica as a large continent with rivers, mountains, and distinct coastlines features now hidden beneath the ice. The level of detail suggests actual surveys, not just guesswork. Then there's the Boischet map from 1754, which shows Antarctica as two separate landmasses divided by a waterway. Modern data confirms that beneath the ice, Antarctica is indeed two main islands connected by a land bridge. How could an 18th century cartographer have known this? These maps point to an ancient civilization with advanced maritime and mapping skills, one that explored the world before the end of the last ice age. Could this civilization have been Atlantis? Some researchers believe Antarctica was Atlantis. According to this theory, Atlantis was a temperate continent located at the South Pole. Then a catastrophe caused the Earth's crust to shift, moving Antarctica to its current frigid position and burying it under ice. This idea, known as crustal displacement, was popularized by Charles Hapgood in the 1950s. He argued the Earth's crust could shift rapidly, moving continents thousands of miles in a short time. This would explain how a continent could be temperate and inhabited one moment and frozen the next. Even Albert Einstein was so intrigued by the theory that he wrote the foreword to Hapgood's book. However, modern geology generally favors plate tectonics, which explains continental movement as a slow, gradual process over millions of years. But the maps remain an unsolved puzzle. If Antarctica has been frozen for thousands of years, how did ancient cartographers map its ice-free coastline so accurately? Skeptics say the maps might show a speculative southern landmass that geographers simply assumed was there for balance, and that any similarities are just a coincidence. But cartographic experts who have studied the Piri Reis map confirm the accuracy of its Antarctic coastline is too precise to be accidental. The coordinates, while not perfect, are shockingly good for a map supposedly drawn without any real knowledge of the continent. Another possibility is that these maps preserve knowledge from a lost, forgotten civilization, not necessarily Atlantis, but an advanced Ice Age culture that explored the world before rising sea levels and climate change wiped them out. During the last Ice Age, sea levels were nearly 400 feet lower than today. Huge areas of the continental shelf were exposed as dry land. It's entirely possible that advanced coastal civilizations thrived on these lands, developing maritime technology and exploring distant shores. When the Ice Age ended around 11,700 years ago, the ice caps melted and sea levels rose dramatically, submerging these coastal lands and their cities. This catastrophic flood would have wiped out their settlements, but their knowledge, passed down through generations of survivors, might have been preserved in fragments like these ancient maps. This idea aligns with flood myths found in cultures all over the world. These aren't just stories. They could be the collective memory of a real global catastrophe that ended an entire era of human history. This forgotten civilization wouldn't need to be Atlantis, but an advanced maritime culture that existed long before our recorded history begins. The maps, then, are like echoes from a lost world, whispers of a time when humanity was far more advanced than we give it credit for. They challenge our entire understanding of the past, suggesting a chapter of human history has been lost beneath the waves. So, while the idea of Antarctica being the literal Atlantis faces scientific hurdles, these ancient maps provide compelling evidence of a sophisticated, seafaring civilization that predates our own. They mapped the world with incredible precision, including a continent that shouldn't have been on any map for thousands of years. Whether they were Atlanteans or another forgotten people, their story is one of the greatest mysteries of all time, waiting to be rediscovered. What do you think? Could these ancient maps be the key to unlocking a lost chapter of human history? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's greatest mysteries. When the Ice Age ended around 11,700 years ago, a global catastrophe unfolded. Glaciers melted, and sea levels rose with terrifying speed. Imagine entire coastlines, dotted with settlements and cities, vanishing beneath the waves. Entire civilizations could have been wiped out, their vast knowledge surviving only in bits and pieces, perhaps as fragmented maps passed down through generations. This catastrophic flood scenario could be the key to one of history's greatest puzzles. Ancient maps that depict coastlines with stunning accuracy, including lands that were supposedly undiscovered. The Piri Reis map, for instance, seems to show the coast of Antarctica, but without its ice cap. How is this possible? The theory suggests the original cartographers surveyed these regions when they were ice-free and accessible, long before the Great Floods. And now, recent discoveries in Antarctica itself are adding a new layer of intrigue to this speculation. In 2016, satellite imagery captured something astonishing: what appeared to be pyramid-shaped mountains piercing through the ice sheet. While most geologists maintain these are natural formations, called nunataks, sculpted by wind and erosion, their striking symmetry has fueled intense debate. Could they be the weathered tips of colossal, man-made structures buried deep below? The evidence doesn't stop there. Ground-penetrating radar surveys have detected strange anomalies beneath the vast Antarctic ice sheet. These surveys reveal geometric patterns and unusual density variations that some researchers interpret as possible. Artificial structures are ghostly outlines of a buried city. It's tantalizing evidence, but the extreme conditions on the continent make any kind of real archaeological investigation almost impossible. We're talking about an ice sheet that's up to 3 miles thick in some places. International treaties designed to protect Antarctica's fragile environment also create significant hurdles for large-scale excavation. If a civilization really did exist there before the ice came, any ruins would be crushed under an incomprehensible weight. But if something did survive, how would we even reach it? It would require drilling through miles of solid ice, a monumental feat of engineering that is both technically daunting and environmentally controversial. The secrets of Antarctica are locked in a very deep freezer. But clues might not only be buried under ice, they might also be hidden in ancient texts. Greek and Roman writers often spoke of a vast, mysterious continent at the bottom of the world, which they called Terra Australis, the southern land. While much of this was speculation, some of their descriptions contain details that are surprisingly specific, hinting at actual knowledge rather than pure fantasy. Were these ancient writers drawing on forgotten sailors' tales, echoes of a time when Antarctica was navigable? This brings us to the ultimate question. If Antarctica was mapped before it was frozen, who were the map makers? What happened to their civilization? This is where the idea of Atlantis expands beyond a single island. Perhaps Atlantis wasn't a place, but a global maritime culture, a seafaring civilization that explored the entire planet during the last ice age. They could have established outposts and colonies on multiple continents, including a then-temperate Antarctica. Then, when climate change triggered the great floods that destroyed their world, the survivors scattered. They fled to different regions, seeking refuge among more primitive local populations. These survivors, carrying with them the advanced knowledge of their lost civilization, could have been the catalysts for the sudden and inexplicable rise of cultures around the world. Think about it. Around 10,000 BCE, sophisticated civilizations in Egypt, Mesopotamia, India, and Central America seemed to emerge out of nowhere. They suddenly possessed advanced knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, and architecture, building incredible monuments that we still struggle to understand. Could this have been the legacy of the Atlantean survivors, the seeds of a lost golden age? In this light, the ancient maps take on a new meaning. They might be the last surviving fragments of a comprehensive world atlas, created by master navigators who sailed seas that no longer exist in mapped coastlines now. Buried under hundreds of feet of water or miles of ice, they are whispers from a forgotten chapter of human history. As we stare into the frozen heart of Antarctica, we have to consider that our accepted timeline of history might be incomplete. The ice may hold secrets that could completely rewrite our understanding of who we are and where we come from. But for now, those secrets remain locked away, waiting for a future when our technology and our will are strong enough to finally uncover what lies beneath. The search for Atlantis has taken us on an incredible journey across oceans and continents, from volcanic islands in the Aegean to strange stone formations in the Caribbean, from a giant eye in the desert to the frozen wastes of Antarctica. Whether Atlantis was a real, physical place, or a powerful myth woven from the memories of ancient catastrophes, the quest itself reveals just how much of our own past remains a mystery, hidden in plain sight, just waiting to be discovered. Now, we turn our attention from lands that might have been lost to structures that undeniably exist. We will explore ancient monuments, so massive and so precisely engineered that they defy conventional explanations and challenge our entire understanding of what ancient civilizations were capable of. For over 4,000 years, the pyramids of Egypt have stood as monuments to human ambition and ingenuity. Yet the more we study these ancient structures, the more questions arise. How did Bronze Age builders achieve precision that rivals modern engineering? What knowledge did they possess that has been lost to time? And most mysteriously, were the pyramids really built as tombs, or did they serve a purpose we have yet to understand? Let's examine the evidence. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built for Pharaoh Khufu around 2560 BCE, is the last remaining wonder of the ancient world. Standing for 181 feet tall, it was the tallest human-made structure for over 3,800 years, but its true wonder lies not in its size, but in its precision. The pyramid's base covers 13 acres and is made of about 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing between 2.5 to 80 tons. The total weight is an estimated 6 million tons. Yet despite this massive scale, the base is level 2 within less than 1 inch across its entire 756-foot length. Modern engineers struggle to achieve this, even with laser-guided equipment. The ancient Egyptians supposedly did it with copper tools and string. The four sides are aligned to the cardinal directions with an accuracy of 1/15 of a degree. This is more precise than the Royal Observatory in Greenwich, England. How did Bronze Age builders achieve such astronomical alignment without compasses or advanced instruments? The pyramid's dimensions also encode sophisticated mathematical relationships. The ratio of the pyramid's height to its base perimeter equals the ratio of a circle's radius to its circumference. In other words, it incorporates the value of pi to remarkable accuracy. This is extraordinary because pi wasn't supposedly calculated to this precision until the Greek mathematician Archimedes, nearly 2,000 years later. Yet the builders embedded it in stone around 2560 BCE. The structure also encodes the golden ratio, phi, a mathematical proportion found throughout nature. The ratio of the pyramid's slant height to half its base equals phi with startling accuracy. Some researchers argue these mathematical relationships are just coincidences, that the builders simply chose proportions that looked right. But the precision suggests intentional design. The construction itself presents seemingly insurmountable challenges. The pyramid contains about 2.3 million blocks. If it was built during Khufu's 23-year reign, workers would have needed to place one block every 2 to 3 minutes, working 24 hours a day. Even with a 10-hour workday, that's a block every 5 minutes for 23 years straight. And that doesn't even account for quarrying, transporting, and shaping the stones. The granite blocks in the King's chamber weigh up to 80 tons each and were transported from quarries 500 miles away. The limestone casing stones that once covered the pyramid were cut and fitted so precisely that a knife blade cannot fit between them. Modern stonemasons, using diamond-tipped saws, struggled to achieve such tight tolerances. The ancient Egyptians supposedly did this with copper chisels and stone hammers. The interior passages present even more mysteries. The Grand Gallery, a passage leading to the King's Chamber, rises at a 26-degree angle for 153 feet. Its walls are massive limestone blocks fitted together with such precision that it has remained stable for over 4,500 years. The King's Chamber itself is an engineering masterpiece. The ceiling has 9 granite beams, each weighing about 50 tons. Above them are 5 relieving chambers designed to distribute the immense weight of the pyramid and prevent the chamber from collapsing. This sophisticated understanding of structural engineering is remarkable for a civilization supposedly in its architectural infancy. It demonstrates knowledge of load distribution and stress analysis that wouldn't be formally codified until the Renaissance. The pyramid's orientation is equally precise. The descending passage aligns with the North Star's position in 2450 BCE, suggesting it could have served as an astronomical observatory. The so-called air shafts in the King's and Queen's chambers also point toward specific stars. The northern shaft from the King's Chamber aligned with Thuban, the pole star in ancient times. The southern shaft pointed toward Orion's belt, which the Egyptians associated with Osiris, god of the afterlife. These alignments suggest the pyramid was not just a tomb, but a kind of astronomical instrument designed to help the pharaoh's journey to the stars. But perhaps the most puzzling aspect is what it lacks: definitive proof of its purpose. No mummy was ever found in the King's Chamber. No treasure, no grave goods, no inscriptions identifying Khufu as the builder. The only evidence linking the pyramid to Khufu are some quarry marks found in the relieving chambers, which some researchers question as later additions or forgeries. The sarcophagus in the King's Chamber is too large to fit through the passages, suggesting it was placed during construction. But it was found empty, with no lid. If this was a tomb, where is the body? Where are the treasures that accompanied every other pharaoh? Some researchers propose the pyramid was never intended as a tomb at all. Alternative theories suggest it was a power plant, a water pump, or a device for generating energy through some unknown ancient technology. While these ideas lack mainstream acceptance, they arise from genuine mysteries. The pyramid's internal design doesn't match other Egyptian tombs. The massive granite beams, precise passages, and mathematical encoding all seem excessive for a simple burial chamber. The acoustic properties of the King's Chamber are also unusual. It resonates at a frequency of about 16 Hz, which is below the range of human hearing but can induce altered states of consciousness. Was this intentional? Did ancient priests use these acoustics for religious rituals? Modern experiments have shown that chanting or drumming in the chamber produces powerful resonance effects. Some suggest the chamber was designed for acoustic rituals rather than as a tomb. The precision of the Great Pyramid raises a fundamental question. How did a civilization that had supposedly just emerged from the Stone Age create the most precisely engineered structure in the ancient world? The conventional timeline states that Egyptian civilization began around 3100 BCE within 500 years. They had progressed from mud brick structures to the Great Pyramid, a leap in sophistication that seems almost impossible. It's as if the pyramid builders possessed knowledge far beyond their supposed technological level. Some researchers suggest they inherited this knowledge from an earlier, more advanced civilization, perhaps survivors of a lost culture. Others propose that our timeline of Egyptian history is wrong. The that the civilization is far older than currently believed, giving them more time to develop their skills. What cannot be disputed is that the Great Pyramid represents an achievement that has never been duplicated. No later pyramid matches its precision. No subsequent civilization built anything comparable until modern times. The pyramid stands as a testament to capabilities we don't fully understand, built by people whose knowledge exceeded what their technology should have allowed. As we stand before this ancient wonder, we must ask, what other knowledge did the ancients possess that we have yet to rediscover? If the mind-blowing precision of the pyramids astonishes us, then the question of how they were built has puzzled researchers for centuries. Think about it. No ancient texts describe the construction process, and no blueprints have ever been found. All we have are clues from archaeology and modern experiments trying to piece it all together. The most common theory, championed by experts like Egyptologist Mark Lenner, paints a picture of incredible human effort. It suggests that workers quarried massive limestone blocks using simple copper chisels, stone hammers, and wooden wedges. They'd cut channels around a block, stick in the wooden wedges, and then soak them with water. As the wood expanded, it would literally crack the stone free from the bedrock. Pretty ingenious, right? Once a block was free, and these things weighed about 2.5 tons on average. The same as a modern SUV, i.e. was loaded onto a wooden sledge. Then, teams of maybe 20 to 30 men would drag these sledges across the desert sand. For a long time, people wondered how they managed that without getting stuck. Then, in 2014, physicists discovered a neat trick. Wetting the sand in front of the sledge reduces friction by half. And guess what? Ancient Egyptian art actually shows workers pouring water in front of sledges, so it seems they knew exactly what they were doing. But okay, dragging blocks across flat ground is one thing. Lifting them hundreds of feet into the air is a whole different ballgame. The most popular idea is that the Egyptians built huge external ramps that spiraled around the pyramid as it grew taller. Workers would just drag the blocks up these ramps to each new level. The problem, a ramp long enough to reach the top of the Great Pyramid would have to be over a mile long to have a gentle enough slope. A ramp that big would have used more stone than the pyramid itself, and we've found zero archaeological evidence for it. This led French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin to propose a fascinating alternative, an internal ramp. He thinks they built a spiral ramp on the inside of the pyramid. This would explain why there is no evidence of a massive external one and would have been way more efficient for the upper levels. His theory got a huge boost when special scans of the Great Pyramid showed some strange, less dense areas inside that could very well be hidden ramps. It's still debated, but it's a compelling idea. Other theories suggest a mix of methods. Maybe they used ramps for the heavy lifting at the bottom, then switched to a system of levers and cranes for the higher, lighter blocks. We do see ancient artwork showing workers using levers, so it's definitely plausible. But here's where it gets really tricky. When people have tried to replicate these methods, the results have been mixed. Back in the 70s, a Japanese team tried to build a small-scale pyramid using ancient techniques. It was a disaster. Their copper tools wore out almost instantly on hard granite. Their ramps collapsed, and moving the blocks was way harder than they thought. They eventually gave up. A more successful experiment in the 90s managed to quarry and raise a small obelisk using ancient tools. So it's possible, but on a much, much smaller scale than the Great Pyramid. And then you have the granite blocks in the King's Chamber. These monsters weigh up to 80 tons and came from a quarry 500 miles away. The theory is they were floated down the Nile on huge barges. We've even found evidence of ancient canals near Giza that would have brought the river right to the construction site. But imagine the engineering needed just to load and unload an 80-ton block from a boat. The precision is what really boggles the mind. Some blocks are fitted together so perfectly that you can even slide a piece of paper between them. How did they achieve that with simple tools like plumb bobs and wooden squares? Some engineers, like Christopher Dunn, argue they must have had more advanced technology. He points to saw marks on granite that suggest they were using massive saws with incredibly hard teeth, moving at speeds that copper tools just can't match. Mainstream Egyptologists disagree, saying that, with enough time, patience, and sand used as an abrasive, you could achieve the same results. Another wild theory comes from chemist Joseph Davidovits. He suggests that some of the pyramid blocks aren't carved stone at all, but an ancient form of concrete. He argues they crushed limestone, mixed it with other minerals, and poured it into molds right on site. This would explain the perfect fit between blocks and the strange air bubbles and organic bits found in some samples. Most geologists, however, have examined the blocks and are convinced they are natural stone. The debate rages on. And of course, you have the more speculative ideas involving lost technologies like acoustic levitation or sound-based engineering. Proponents point to ancient legends and strange hieroglyphs, but so far, there's no hard physical evidence to back it up. What all this tells us is that the ancient Egyptians had an incredible understanding of logistics, engineering, and project management. Whether they used simple tools with unbelievable skill and dedication, or if they had techniques we've lost to time, we still don't know for sure. Every time we try to replicate their work with ancient methods, we fall short. It's a humbling reminder that 4,500 years ago, a civilization created something that we, with all our modern technology, still can't fully explain. It makes you wonder what other knowledge has been lost to the sands of time. Thanks for watching. If you love unraveling ancient mysteries as much as I do, make sure to like and subscribe for more deep dives into history. See you next time. Just east of the Great Pyramid stands another enigma, the Great Sphinx of Giza, with the body of a lion and the head of a pharaoh. This massive statue has gazed across the desert for millennia. Conventional Egyptology dates the Sphinx to around 2500 BCE, crediting its construction to Pharaoh Khufu. The Sphinx's face is even believed to be his portrait carved in stone. But in 1991, a geologist named Robert Schoch made an observation that would ignite one of archaeology's most heated controversies. He noticed that the weathering on the Sphinx and its surrounding enclosure didn't look like the wind and sand erosion seen on other ancient monuments nearby. Instead, the Sphinx showed deep, rounded grooves, the kind you'd expect from heavy rainfall over a very long time. This is a huge deal because Egypt's climate has been dry for the last 5,000 years. The kind of sustained rain needed to create these patterns has yet to happen in the region since about 7,000 to 5,000 BCE. That's thousands of years before the Sphinx was supposedly built. Schoch's radical conclusion was that the Sphinx must be at least 7,000 to 9,000 years old, which would make it one of the oldest structures on Earth, predating Egyptian civilization as we know it by thousands of years. The geological evidence is compelling. The enclosure walls around the Sphinx show the same vertical water erosion patterns. Schoch, a geologist from Boston University, compared these patterns to other limestone structures in Egypt and found a clear difference. Structures definitely dated to the Old Kingdom show sharp-edged erosion from wind-blown sand, while the Sphinx's erosion is vertical and rounded, consistent with precipitation. Of course, Egyptologists immediately challenged this. They suggested other causes, like groundwater seepage or ancient Nile floods, but Schoch countered that groundwater would erode from the bottom up, not top-down like we see, and the Nile's floods never reached high enough to touch the Sphinx. Another geologist, Colin Reeder, agreed there was water erosion but suggested a different timeline. Maybe a brief wet period around 3000 BCE, still older, but not as ancient as Schoch proposed. Then, seismic studies added another layer of mystery. Researchers found that the floor of the Sphinx enclosure was weathered much more deeply than the walls. This is the opposite of what you'd expect if it were all carved at once. It suggests the floor is exposed to rain for a longer period, meaning the enclosure might have been carved in stages over thousands of years. And what about the Sphinx's head? It's noticeably small compared to its massive body, which is weird for Egyptian art. Some researchers think the head was recarved from a larger original, maybe an actual lion's head. This would explain why the head shows less erosion at Esnuan, why it looks a bit out of proportion. The conventional dating of the Sphinx relies mostly on context, not direct proof. There are no inscriptions on the Sphinx identifying its builder. The link to Khufu comes from a much later stela placed between its paws and the fact that his pyramid is nearby. But facial recognition studies comparing the Sphinx to statues of Khufu have given mixed results. If the Sphinx is really that old, it would completely change our understanding of human history. It would mean an advanced civilization capable of creating monumental sculptures existed long before the pharaohs. This could explain the sudden appearance of fully developed hieroglyphics and architecture. Around 3100 BCE, maybe they had help from an earlier culture. Some even connect this to the legend of Atlantis. If a civilization was wiped out around 9600 BCE, survivors could have migrated to Egypt and built the Sphinx. Its lion body might be a clue to, around 10,500 BCE, during the astronomical age of Leo. The constellation Leo would have risen on the eastern horizon at sunrise. Perhaps the Sphinx was built as a giant marker for this celestial event. Mainstream Egyptologists remain unconvinced, pointing to tool marks and quarrying techniques that match other Old Kingdom sites. The debate has become intense, with accusations of pseudoscience on one side and academic stubbornness on the other. But Schoch's geological analysis is based on standard scientific principles. At the same time, the archaeological evidence for a 2500 BCE date can't just be dismissed. Maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle. The enclosure could have been started during an ancient wet period and then finished by Khufu thousands of years later. This would explain both the water erosion and the Old Kingdom connections. Or perhaps we just don't fully understand all the geological processes at play in the Egyptian desert. What is undeniable is that the Sphinx holds secrets we haven't yet unraveled. It has weathered millennia of desert winds and human speculation. Perhaps one day, it will finally reveal its true age and purpose. Until then, it remains what it has always been, a mystery carved in stone. Asking questions we're only now beginning to learn how to answer. Thanks for watching. If you found this as fascinating as I do, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's greatest mysteries. See you in the next video. When you think of pyramids, you probably picture Egypt. But what if I told you that was just the tip of the iceberg? Pyramid structures are found on every inhabited continent. built by cultures separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years. This isn't just a coincidence, it's a global mystery. Why did so many ancient civilizations, with no known contact, all decide to build the same monumental structures? Let's travel to Mexico. The pyramids of Teotihuacan are mind-blowing. The Pyramid of the Sun, built around 200 CE, is nearly as large as the Great Pyramid of Giza. The entire city is aligned to the stars, specifically the Pleiades star cluster. How did they achieve this? Well, here's the kicker. They built this masterpiece without wheels, without large animals for transport, and without metal tools. It was all human power and stone instruments. Recently, archaeologists found a secret tunnel system under the Pyramid of the Sun, leading to a chamber carved from solid bedrock. It seems the pyramid was built to mark this specific spot. This pattern of building over underground chambers or caves isn't unique to Mexico. We see it in Egypt, and it's a key part of the controversy surrounding pyramids in other parts of the world. Now, let's head to China. Satellite images have revealed over 100 pyramid-like mounds, many covered by trees and soil, just looking like regular hills. The Chinese government keeps these sites under tight wraps, making them difficult to study. The biggest one, called the White Pyramid, is rumored to be over 1,000 feet tall, which would make the Great Pyramid of Giza look small. Are they man-made? Ancient Chinese texts do talk about emperors building mountain-sized tombs, and we know the tomb of Emperor Qin Shi Huang with its famous terracotta army is shaped like a pyramid. Then there's Sudan, home to the Nubian pyramids. Built by the Kingdom of Kush, they are smaller and steeper than their Egyptian neighbors. While there was definitely cultural influence from Egypt, the Nubians also added their own unique architectural twists, suggesting they weren't just copying but innovating. One of the most heated debates revolves around the Bosnian pyramids. A researcher named Samir Osmanagic claims that several large hills in Bosnia are actually ancient, man-made pyramids covered in dirt and vegetation. The largest, which he calls the Pyramid of the Sun, would be the biggest on Earth. Geological surveys have found some strange anomalies, like flat surfaces and regular angles, and excavators have unearthed what some believe are manufactured stone blocks. Mainstream scientists, however, are convinced these are just natural rock formations. The whole controversy makes you wonder, how many other ancient pyramids might be hiding in plain sight, disguised as natural hills? Even more astonishing is the site of Gunung Padang in Indonesia. Some researchers claim this terraced megalithic site is the world's oldest pyramid, with parts of it dating back over 20,000 years. If that's true, it would mean pyramid building began long before the last ice age. Ground-penetrating radar shows what look like chambers and tunnels, buried deep beneath the surface. Of course, these dates are highly controversial, but the possibility is staggering. So, what's the deal? Why pyramids everywhere? The conventional explanation is convergent evolution. It's the most stable way to build a tall structure with basic technology. A pyramid is just a pile of rocks that won't fall down. It's a logical theory, but it doesn't quite explain the incredible similarities, the precise astronomical alignments, the advanced mathematics, and the sheer engineering skill. This leads to a more controversial idea, a lost global civilization. The theory goes that a highly advanced ancient culture built pyramids all over the world, but was wiped out by a massive catastrophe. The survivors scattered, carrying the knowledge of pyramid building with them. This would explain why perfect pyramids seem to appear suddenly in places like Egypt and Mesoamerica, with no earlier, simpler prototypes. It's as if the knowledge was inherited, not developed over time. Think about it. So many ancient cultures have myths about civilizing gods, or culture bearers who arrived after a great flood or disaster, teaching humanity architecture, astronomy, and agriculture. Could these be collective memories of real events? From the deserts of Egypt to the jungles of Central America, from the plains of China to the hills of Bosnia, pyramids stand as silent monuments to human ambition. Whether they were built independently or based on a shared, ancient blueprint, they all reach for the heavens. But pyramids are not the only ancient mystery that challenges our view of the past. All over the world there are other structures so massive and so precisely engineered, they force us to rethink everything we thought we knew about what ancient people could achieve. Stay tuned as we explore even more evidence of advanced ancient technology. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into our mysterious past. The standard story of human history is pretty simple, right? We started as primitive hunter-gatherers, slowly figured out farming, built villages, then cities, and eventually complex societies with writing and grand architecture. This whole process supposedly kicked off about 6,000 years ago in places like Mesopotamia and Egypt. Everything before that, we call it prehistory, a time of simple tribes with basic tools. But what if that whole story is wrong? What if I told you that archaeological discoveries have completely shattered this neat little timeline? We've found sites that are thousands of years older than the supposed birth of civilization. We've uncovered structures built with engineering skills that should have been impossible for the people of that time. The evidence is piling up, and it suggests our history is way more complex and mysterious than we ever imagined. There might have been advanced civilizations that rose and fell long before the first pharaoh ever ruled Egypt. Let's take a look at the evidence. Back in 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt started digging at a site in southeastern Turkey called Göbekli Tepe, which means Potbelly Hill. What he found there would completely rewrite our understanding of the ancient world. Göbekli Tepe is a massive complex of huge stone pillars arranged in circles. Some of these pillars are 18 feet tall and weigh up to 20 tons. They're covered in incredibly detailed carvings of animals, lions, foxes, scorpions, and snakes. The craftsmanship is just breathtaking. But here's the truly mind-blowing part. Göbekli Tepe is about 11,600 years old. That's right. It was built around 9600 BCE at the end of the last ice age. To put that in perspective, that's over 6,000 years before Stonehenge and 7,000 years before the Great Pyramids of Giza. It is thousands of years before humans were supposed to have the ability to organize projects on this scale. According to the old timeline, the people who built Göbekli Tepe were just nomadic hunter-gatherers. They shouldn't have had permanent settlements, farming, or the complex social structures needed to pull this off. Yet, somehow, they quarried, moved, carved, and set up these massive stones, creating a complex that spans over 20 acres. The implications are just staggering. Everything we thought we knew about the dawn of civilization has to be re-examined. The old theory was that the agricultural revolution happened around 10,000 BCE, and it took thousands of years for farming to lead to cities and big monuments. Göbekli Tepe flips that idea completely on its head. Here we have a massive piece of architecture built by people who were still supposedly hunting and gathering. In fact, the site is at least 1,000 years older than any evidence of agriculture in that area. This has led some archaeologists to a radical new idea. What if building monuments came first, and farming was invented to support it? Think about it. Building Göbekli Tepe would have required hundreds of workers over many years. You have to feed all those people, and that means you need a reliable food source. This pressure might have been the very thing that sparked the development of agriculture and animal domestication. So, the desire to build a sacred place may have kicked off the agricultural revolution, not the other way around. And there's evidence to back this up. Around Göbekli Tepe, archaeologists have found the world's oldest signs of wheat cultivation and the earliest domesticated pigs. These innovations pop up shortly after the site was built, suggesting they were developed to support the construction project. But this just leads to more questions. Why would hunter-gatherers who are just trying to survive in a tough post-ice age world pour so much energy and resources into building a ceremonial site? What was their motivation? The purpose of the site is still a huge mystery. Unlike later temples, there's no sign that anyone lived at Göbekli Tepe. No houses, no garbage dumps, no signs of everyday life. It seems it was a place people came to for rituals, and then they left. Another strange thing is that the circular enclosures were deliberately buried after they were used for a while. Workers would fill them up with dirt and rubble, and then build a new enclosure on top. This happened over and over for thousands of years. Why would they go to all that trouble just to bury their work and start again? Maybe it was part of a ritual cycle, where each generation built their own sacred space and then ceremonially closed it. The animal carvings also give us some clues. They mostly show predators and dangerous animals, which might point to themes of death, transformation, and the untamed forces of nature. Some pillars even show human-like figures with animal heads, which could represent shamans or spiritual beings. One pillar is particularly fascinating. It seems to show a comet or a meteor. This has led some researchers to suggest that Göbekli Tepe was built in response to a cosmic disaster. There's a theory that a comet hit the Earth around 10,800 BCE, causing a period of dramatic climate cooling called the Younger Dryas. This event could have caused mass extinctions and destroyed earlier civilizations. Maybe Göbekli Tepe was built as a memorial to this catastrophe, or a warning to future generations. It's a speculative idea, but it does line up with geological evidence and with ancient flood myths from all over the world that talk about a great cataclysm in the distant past. The precision of the construction is also astounding for its age. The T-shaped pillars are all a standard design, which means they had a plan. The way they carved the stone was incredibly efficient, and the art is as sophisticated as what you'd see in civilizations thousands of years later. How did Stone Age people learn to do this? And where are the practice runs? Göbekli Tepe just appears in the archaeological record, fully formed, with no earlier cruder versions. It's like the knowledge to build it just appeared out of nowhere. This pattern of advanced knowledge appearing suddenly is something we see again and again in ancient history. The pyramids, Sumerian writing, Mesoamerican astronomy, they all seem to emerge fully developed. Some researchers have even proposed that Göbekli Tepe was built by the survivors of a much older, more advanced civilization that was wiped out by that Younger Dryas catastrophe. These survivors would have carried the knowledge of their lost world with them. This would explain the site's sudden sophistication and why these supposed hunter-gatherers had such advanced engineering skills. And then there's the mystery of its abandonment. around 8000 BCE, after being used for about 1,600 years. Göbekli Tepe was deliberately and completely buried. Workers filled in all the enclosures, creating the artificial hill we see today. Why did the rise of farming and permanent villages make this nomadic ritual site irrelevant? Was it climate change? Or maybe, just maybe, its purpose had been fulfilled, and it was intentionally preserved, waiting for us to find it. What's really exciting is that we've only excavated about 5% of the site. Ground-penetrating radar shows at least 20 more circular enclosures are still buried, and some of them might be even bigger and more complex than what we've already found. What secrets are still hidden under all that dirt? Göbekli Tepe has already forced us to rethink everything we thought we knew about our ancestors. It proves that 11,600 years ago, people were capable of amazing engineering, art, and social organization. It shows that monumental architecture might have been the catalyst for civilization, not the result of it. And it reminds us that our history is much deeper and more incredible than we ever believed. As we explore these ancient pillars, we have to wonder, what other secrets does the Earth hold? And what else have we gotten wrong about our past? Thanks for watching, and if you want to keep exploring these mysteries with us, make sure to subscribe. High in the Bolivian Andes, at an altitude of over 12,000 feet, lies one of South America's most mysterious archaeological sites, Pumapunku, part of the larger Tiwanaku complex. Pumapunku is a field of scattered megalithic stones, displaying a level of precision that seems almost impossible for its time. Its name means Door of the Puma in the local Aymara language. Conventional archaeology suggests it was built by the Tiwanaku civilization around 1500 years ago, but the incredible stonework has led some researchers to question this, proposing the site could be far more ancient. What makes Pumapunku so extraordinary isn't just the size of its stones, though some weigh over 100 tons. It's the precision. The stones have incredibly flat surfaces, perfect right angles, and intricate interlocking joints that would be a challenge to create even with modern tools. The most famous are the H-blocks, massive andesite blocks carved with such accuracy that they could fit together like giant Lego pieces. Their surfaces are smooth to within fractions of a millimeter. Andesite is an extremely hard volcanic rock, harder than most steel. The idea of shaping this material with the simple copper and stone tools that Tiwanaku supposedly had seems nearly impossible. Yet, the stones show evidence of advanced cutting techniques. Some blocks have perfectly straight channels, as if cut by a saw. Others have precise drill holes that look like they were made by a rotating tool. Engineer Christopher Dunn argues that the precision here exceeds what could be achieved with primitive tools. He suggests the builders had advanced machining capabilities, maybe even diamond-tipped saws or something more sophisticated. Mainstream archaeologists counter that patient work with stone hammers and abrasive sand could produce these results. But the sheer scale and consistency of the precision at Pumapunku challenge that idea. We're talking about hundreds of blocks, all displaying similar levels of accuracy. The labor investment would have been colossal. The interlocking joints present another puzzle. Some stones have complex shapes with notches and recesses that fit perfectly with their matching stones. This requires not just precision cutting but incredible planning and measurement. Modern stonemasons are often amazed by the tight tolerances, which are stricter than what's typical in construction today. The stones fit so perfectly that no mortar was needed. Some blocks show evidence of metal clamps that once held them together, set into eye-shaped channels. This technique also appears in ancient Egypt and Greece, raising questions about shared knowledge across oceans. The channels themselves are cut with such precision, parallel sides, flat bottoms, and sharp corners that they appear machined. The scattered state of Pumapunku only adds to its mystery. The massive stones lie jumbled as if thrown by a tremendous force. Was it earthquakes and weathering over centuries? Or was it a more sudden, violent event? Local legends speak of a great flood that destroyed the site. Geological evidence does show that the high plateau was once much wetter, and nearby Lake Titicaca was once much larger. Some propose Pumapunku was originally a port, destroyed when the water levels changed catastrophically. The dating is also controversial. Radiocarbon dates from organic material point to around 500 to 600 CE, but that only dates the organic matter, not the stones themselves. The stones could have been cut much earlier. So what was its purpose? A ceremonial complex? An industrial manufacturing center producing standardized parts? The precision suggests something more than a simple temple. When known explanations seem inadequate, more imaginative theories arise. From power plants to what we know for sure is that Pumapunku demonstrates capabilities that challenge our understanding of the Tiwanaku civilization. Recent 3D laser scans have revealed even more precision than is visible to the naked eye, showing cuts that suggest sophisticated machinery. What lies buried beneath the site? Ground-penetrating radar has detected possible structures, but investigation is slow. The Tiwanaku civilization collapsed around 1000 CE, and the knowledge of how to build Pumapunku was lost. Even the Inca master builders themselves viewed the ruins with awe, attributing them to gods or giants. They didn't know how it was built. As we look at these impossibly precise stones, we have to consider that ancient people may have possessed knowledge we've underestimated. The evidence is literally carved in stone. The precision exists. The massive blocks are real. The complex joints fit perfectly. These are facts. What we lack is an explanation that satisfies both the archaeology and the engineering. Until we find one, Pumapunku will remain a profound mystery, a testament to a level of ancient ingenuity we are still struggling to comprehend. Thank you for watching. If you're fascinated by the mysteries of our ancient past, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's greatest enigmas. In the remote southeastern Pacific, over 2,000 miles from the nearest continent, lies one of archaeology's greatest mysteries, Easter Island, or as its people call it, Rapa Nui. The island is world famous for its moai, massive stone statues with giant heads and mysterious expressions. Nearly 900 of these statues dot the landscape, some standing on ceremonial platforms, others lying abandoned, as if frozen in time for centuries. The moai have sparked our imagination. How did a small, isolated population create and move these colossal monuments? Why did they dedicate so much of their lives to building statues? And what led to the collapse of their civilization? The popular story of Easter Island is often told as a cautionary tale of environmental suicide. The story goes that the Rapa Nui people, obsessed with building bigger and bigger statues, chopped down all their trees, which led to ecological collapse, war, and starvation. But recent research paints a much more complex picture, one of incredible human ingenuity, adaptation, and resilience. The moai themselves are feats of engineering, carved from volcanic rock at the Rano-Raraku quarry. They stand anywhere from 6 to 33 feet tall and weigh up to 80 tons. The biggest one ever attempted, still fused to the bedrock, would have been 72 feet tall and weighed about 270 tons. Imagine carving that with only stone tools. Once carved, the statues had to be moved, sometimes for miles, across rough terrain to their ceremonial platforms, called ahu. This is one of the biggest puzzles. How did they move an 80-ton statue without wheels, large animals, or even big trees for rollers? The local Rapa Nui legends offer a fascinating clue. They say the moai walked for a long time. This was dismissed as just a myth, but what if it wasn't? In 2012, archaeologists Terry Hunt and Carl Lippo proved that a moai could in fact be walked. By tying ropes to the head, a small team could rock the statue from side to side, inching it forward in a walking motion. This method explains why many fallen statues found along ancient roads are face down, as if they tripped while walking. It would have taken only 15 to 20 people, making this incredible achievement much more believable for the island's small population. So, why build them? The moai were representations of deified ancestors, chiefs, and important figures who became protective spirits after death. Each clan would commission a statue to honor their ancestors and ask for their protection. The statues were placed on platforms facing inland, watching over their living descendants. This ancestor worship was at the heart of Rapa Nui culture. Competition between clans drove them to build bigger and more impressive moai, each trying to outdo the other. Some statues were even crowned with giant red stone hats called pukao, which weighed up to 12 tons themselves. Imagine lifting that onto a 30-foot statue using only ramps made of earth and stone. Another amazing detail is the eyes. Most moai today look eyeless, but they originally had eyes made of white, coral, and red or black stone. These eyes were inserted in a special ceremony to awaken the statue, filling it with spiritual power or mana. With eyes, the statues look alive, their gaze powerful and commanding. Now what about that story of collapse from cutting down all the trees? It's true the island was once covered in palm forests, which disappeared around the same time moai construction peaked. But the real culprit might not have been humans. When the first Polynesians arrived, they accidentally brought rats with them. These rats ate the palm seeds, preventing the forest from regenerating. The Rapa Nui people were incredibly adaptable. They developed clever rock gardens to protect crops from the wind and hold in moisture. Their population didn't crash. It remained stable for centuries. The real collapse came later, with the arrival of Europeans. New diseases like smallpox and tuberculosis wiped out thousands. Then, in 1862, slave raiders kidnapped half the remaining population. By 1877, only 111 Rapa Nui people were left. The tragedy of Easter Island wasn't environmental failure. It was colonialism, slavery, and disease. This changes everything. Easter Island isn't a story of self-destruction, but a testament to human resilience tragically cut short. The Rapa Nui people created something extraordinary with limited resources. They did it all without metal, wheels, or a written language to pass down their knowledge, just oral tradition and pure human effort. The nearly 400 unfinished statues still in the quarry offer a snapshot in time. They weren't necessarily abandoned because of a disaster. It's more likely the culture simply evolved. The rise of a new religion, the Birdman cult, may have made the statues less important, so their construction just slowly faded away. And what about the toppled moai? Almost all were eventually pushed over. This wasn't just random destruction during wartime. It may have been a ritual act. When a new chief took power, the old ancestor statue might have been respectfully laid down. Later, Christian missionaries also encouraged the destruction of these pagan idols. Reaching this remote island was an epic feat in itself. The Rapa Nui are descendants of massive Polynesian navigators who crossed thousands of miles of open ocean in double-hulled canoes around the year 1200. They also developed one of the few independent writing systems in Oceania, known as rung. Tragically, most of these inscribed wooden tablets were destroyed, and the knowledge of how to read them died out, leaving us with another unsolved mystery. Today, the descendants of the Rapa Nui are working to preserve their unique culture while balancing the pressures of modern tourism. As we look at these silent stone giants, we see a story not of failure, but of ingenuity, adaptation, and the universal human desire to create something that lasts. The moai will stand long after we are gone, guardians of an island and secrets we are only just beginning to truly understand. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this journey into the mysteries of Easter Island fascinating, forget to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into our world's greatest enigmas. See you next time. From the megalithic temples of Göbekli Tepe to the impossible stones of Baalbek, from the precision of Puma Punku to the enigmatic moai of Easter Island, we've explored evidence that challenges our assumptions about ancient civilizations. These sites prove our ancestors had knowledge, skills, and organizational abilities far beyond what we've traditionally believed. They built monuments that still impress us, using techniques we struggle to replicate. But physical monuments are only one type of legacy. Ancient civilizations also preserved knowledge in astronomy, mathematics, and medicine that shaped human development for millennia. So, let's now explore this lost knowledge of the ancients. Throughout history, knowledge has been gained and lost in endless cycles. Civilizations rise, accumulate wisdom, then fall, their libraries burned, their discoveries forgotten. The ancient world possessed knowledge that wouldn't be rediscovered for centuries. Greek mathematicians understood concepts that medieval Europe had forgotten. Ancient astronomers mapped the heavens with surprising accuracy. But much of this was lost forever. What did the ancients know that we've had to relearn, and what knowledge remains lost, waiting to be rediscovered? In the ancient world, no place symbolized human knowledge more than the Great Library of Alexandria. Founded in the 3rd century BC, it was part of a research institution called the Mausead. At its peak, the library held up to 700,000 scrolls, making Alexandria the intellectual capital of the ancient world. Scholars traveled from everywhere to study there. The library was so hungry for knowledge that ships arriving in the harbor were searched for books. Any found were copied, with the originals kept for the library's collection. Within these walls, some of history's greatest minds worked. Euclid developed his geometry here. Eratosthenes calculated the Earth's circumference with incredible accuracy. Aristarchus even proposed a heliocentric model of the solar system, 1,800 years before Copernicus. The library was a buzzing hub of collaboration and discovery, but its fate is one of history's greatest tragedies. The library likely declined gradually, damaged by fires during Julius Caesar's civil war and later edicts against pagan temples. The result was the same. The accumulated knowledge of centuries was lost. What was in those burned scrolls? We know from surviving texts that the library held works now lost forever: entire plays, scientific treatises, and historical accounts. The loss is simply incalculable. Some texts did survive through copies. Medieval Islamic scholars preserved many Greek works by translating them into Arabic. These were later translated into Latin during the Renaissance, reintroducing ancient knowledge to the West. But this process was selective. Texts that seemed useful were copied, others were neglected and lost. The Antikythera mechanism, discovered in a shipwreck in 1901, gives us a tantalizing glimpse of what was lost. This bronze device from around 100 BC is an astronomical calculator of extraordinary sophistication. It has over 30 gears that model the motions of the sun, moon, and planets, and could even predict eclipses. Nothing comparable appears in the historical record for over 1,000 years. It shows a level of mechanical engineering we didn't know the ancient Greeks possessed. If it hadn't sunk in that shipwreck, we would never know such technology existed. Then there's the Baghdad battery, found in 1936. This clay jar with a copper cylinder and an iron rod can generate a small electric current when filled with an acid like vinegar. Was this an ancient battery? If so, what was it for? Electroplating medical treatments? We don't know, because no texts ascribe such devices. And what about Greek fire, the Byzantine Empire's secret weapon? This incendiary liquid could burn on water and was nearly impossible to extinguish. The formula was a closely guarded state secret, and when the empire fell, the secret died with it. We still can't be sure we've matched the original formula. Even ancient Roman concrete holds secrets. Structures like the Pantheon have stood for 2,000 years, while modern concrete often crumbles in decades. We've recently learned that Roman concrete used volcanic ash and seawater in a mix that actually grows stronger over time. This knowledge was lost for centuries and is only now being rediscovered. The loss of medical knowledge is particularly tragic. Ancient physicians in Egypt, Greece, and Rome performed surgeries, set broken bones, and used herbal remedies, much of which was forgotten in medieval Europe. The Edwin Smith Papyrus from 1600 BC describes surgical procedures with modern-like precision. How much more did they know? Ancient knowledge of contraceptives, like the plant silphium, was also lost, partly because later religious authorities opposed it. Ancient astronomers also had incredible insights. Aristarchus proposed that the Earth orbited the Sun in the 3rd century BC. This knowledge was largely forgotten in Europe until Copernicus rediscovered the idea 1,800 years later. Imagine how much faster science might have progressed if that knowledge hadn't been lost. This pattern of loss isn't unique to Alexandria. Spanish conquistadors burned nearly all Maya codices, destroying records of their sophisticated calendar and astronomy. The Mongol invasion of Baghdad in 1258 saw the House of Wisdom destroyed, with its priceless books thrown into the Tigris River. Knowledge that challenges authority, is passed down orally, or is known only to a small group is always vulnerable. But knowledge can also be resilient. The rediscovery of classical texts during the Renaissance proves this, and today, digital archives offer new ways to preserve our collective wisdom, though they come with their own challenges of format, obsolescence, and data decay. The story of the Library of Alexandria is a timeless warning. Knowledge is precious and fragile. What we know can be lost. Its loss reminds us of our duty to preserve and share what we learn, to ensure that hard-won wisdom is never again lost to the flames of ignorance or the erosion of time. Thanks for watching. Long before telescopes and computers, ancient peoples studied the heavens with remarkable precision. They tracked planets, predicted eclipses, and understood celestial mechanics in ways that almost seem impossible. So how did they do it? And what does their astronomical knowledge tell us about how sophisticated they really were? The story of ancient astronomy begins not with written records, but with stones. Stonehenge, that iconic monument in England, is probably the most famous ancient observatory, built in stages between 3000 and 2000 BCE. Its massive stones align perfectly with the summer and winter solstices, but researchers now believe it did more than just mark the seasons. There are also alignments with lunar cycles, including the 18.6-year lunar standstill. Tracking this requires decades of continuous observation, suggesting knowledge was passed down through generations. Some even think Stonehenge was used to predict eclipses. Imagine the power that would give you, to foretell when the sun would darken in the sky. But even older is Nabta Playa in Egypt, and dating to around 5000 BCE, this stone circle aligns with the solstice and certain stars, making it possibly the world's oldest astronomical observatory. This suggests sophisticated skywatching began in Africa, thousands of years before the great Egyptian civilization even rose. Then we have the Babylonians in ancient Mesopotamia. They kept incredibly detailed records of celestial events on clay tablets. These weren't just casual notes. They were systematic scientific observations. The Babylonians developed mathematical models to predict where planets would be. Their astronomical diaries, spanning centuries, are one of the longest continuous scientific projects in human history. They were so accurate that modern astronomers use them to study changes in the Earth's rotation. They even discovered the Saros cycle, an 18-year period that allowed them to predict eclipses with stunning accuracy. The ancient Greeks built on this foundation, adding their own flavor of geometry and math. Around 240 BCE, a brilliant librarian named Eratosthenes calculated the Earth's circumference with incredible precision. He knew that on the summer solstice, the sun was directly overhead in one city, casting no shadow. At the same time, 500 miles north in Alexandria, the sun cast a shadow. Using basic geometry, he figured out the Earth's circumference was about 25,000 miles. He was off by less than 2%. This wasn't a lucky guess. It was pure scientific reasoning. Then there was Aristarchus who, in the 3rd century BCE, proposed that the Earth revolved around the sun, a heliocentric model, 1,800 years before Copernicus. His idea was rejected, partly because it just didn't feel like we were moving. But the genius was there. Over in ancient India, astronomers also developed their own advanced models. The Surya Siddhanta, an ancient text, describes planetary orbits and eclipse predictions. Indian astronomers calculated the length of the solar year with a value remarkably close to our modern one. And of course, India gave the world the concept of zero number that completely revolutionized mathematics and made complex calculations possible. Meanwhile, ancient China was keeping its own meticulous records. They documented comets, novae, and supernova for over 2,000 years. Their record of the supernova in 1054 CE helped create the Crab Nebula, which helps astronomers today understand how stars evolve. They also developed incredible instruments like the armillary sphere to measure the positions of stars. And we can't forget the Maya of They developed one of the most complex calendar systems ever, tracking time over thousands of years with pinpoint accuracy. They were obsessed with the planet Venus, tracking its 584-day cycles so precisely that they could predict its position years in advance. They even had observatories, like El Caracol at Chichen Itza, with windows specifically aligned to track Venus. Like the Indians, they independently developed the concept of zero, which was crucial for their complex calculations. But what about knowledge that wasn't written down? Ancient Polynesian navigators crossed thousands of miles of open ocean without any instruments. They used an encyclopedic knowledge of stars, wave patterns, clouds, and even bird behavior. They could determine their latitude by watching which stars passed directly overhead. It was a skill passed down orally, from master to apprentice. In the 1970s, the Polynesian Voyaging Society built a replica canoe, the Hokal A, and successfully sailed from Hawaii to Tahiti using only these traditional methods, proving it was all possible. Of course, all this astronomical prowess was built on a foundation of mathematics. The Babylonians used a basic 16-number system, the reason we still have 60 minutes in an hour, and understood the Pythagorean theorem 1,000 years before Pythagoras. The Egyptians used math to build the pyramids with jaw-dropping precision. The Great Pyramid's base is level 2 within fractions of an inch over 755 feet. The Greeks took math to another level with figures like Euclid, whose work on geometry became the standard for 2 millennia, and Archimedes, whose genius anticipated calculus. They created a complex mechanical device, the Antikythera mechanism, which was essentially an ancient analog computer used to track celestial cycles. From stone circles to star charts, from oral traditions to mechanical computers, ancient civilizations possessed a profound understanding of the cosmos. Their knowledge, often lost and rediscovered, it shows a universal human drive to look up at the sky and understand our place in the universe. It's a legacy of curiosity and intellect that continues to inspire us today. Thanks for watching. If you found this fascinating, hit that like button and subscribe for more journeys into the past. See you next time. The ancient world was far more connected than we often imagine. Trade routes spanned continents, ships crossed oceans, merchants and explorers traveled thousands of miles, navigating by stars, landmarks, and accumulated knowledge. How did ancient navigators find their way across featureless oceans? What maps did they use? And what does the evidence of ancient navigation tell us about the sophistication of early civilizations? The Piri Reis map, created in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral, has sparked decades of controversy. Drawn on gazelle skin, it shows the Atlantic with the coasts of Europe, Africa, and South America. What's remarkable is its apparent accuracy, especially for South America, which had only recently been discovered by Europeans. Some even claim it shows Antarctica's coastline as it would appear without ice. Piri Reis noted his map was compiled from about 20 older sources, some dating to Alexander the Great. This suggests ancient civilizations possessed detailed geographic knowledge that was later lost. Skeptics argue the supposed Antarctic coastline is just a distorted view of South America, but the map still raises intriguing questions. How did ancient cartographers achieve such accuracy? And what happened to the knowledge they contained? Then there are ancient Portolan charts, medieval maritime maps used for navigation. Appearing in the 13th century, they show Mediterranean coastlines with remarkable accuracies, including correct angles between ports and realistic distances. Their origin is a mystery. They seem to appear fully developed, without clear predecessors. Some researchers propose they were based on much older, possibly Roman, sources. They use compass roses and run lines, making them practical tools for sailors. Someone had to sail these routes and measure them to create such accurate maps. Ancient Phoenician navigation is one of the earliest examples of long-distance sea travel. Around 600 BCE, according to the historian Herodotus, Phoenician sailors circumnavigated Africa. They sailed down the Red Sea, around the southern tip of Africa, and back through the Mediterranean, a 3-year journey. Herodotus himself was skeptical, noting that the sailors claimed the sun was on their right hand as they sailed west around southern Africa. But this detail actually supports the story. South of the equator, the sun does appear to the north, a fact Herodotus wouldn't have known. If true, this was an extraordinary feat of ancient navigation. The Phoenicians kept their navigational knowledge secret for trade advantage. So much of their expertise was never recorded and has been lost. Viking navigation across the North Atlantic is another incredible achievement. Norse sailors reached Iceland, then Greenland and North America around 1000 CE, centuries before Columbus. How did they navigate hundreds of miles of open ocean without compasses? They used a combination of techniques, observing the sun's position, watching for land indicating birds, and reading wave patterns. They may have used sunstones, crystals, that can detect polarized light to find the sun's position even on cloudy days. While we haven't found a definitive Viking sunstone, the sagas mention them. Their knowledge was passed down orally, sailing directions memorized and shared. Yet their settlement in North America was abandoned, and knowledge of the routes was lost. Columbus had no idea the Vikings had been there first. The discovery had to be made all over again. Perhaps the most impressive feat is ancient Polynesian navigation. Polynesians settled islands across the vast Pacific, from Hawaii to New Zealand to Easter Island. These were deliberate, planned voyages, not accidental drifts. Navigators could sail to a specific island and return home. They used sophisticated techniques, star compasses showing the rising and setting points of stars, knowledge of ocean swells, and observation of birds and clouds. This knowledge was entirely oral, passed down through apprenticeships. When European contact disrupted their cultures, much of this knowledge was lost. The revival of traditional navigation in the 1970s, with replica canoes sailing the Pacific, came just in time to rescue this wisdom from the brink of extinction. Ancient Chinese maritime navigation was also remarkable. Admiral Zheng He's voyages in the early 15th century were on an epic scale. Between 1405 and 1433, he led 7 expeditions with massive fleets, some ships reportedly over 400 feet long. They reached Southeast Asia, India, Arabia, and East Africa. They used compasses, invented in China, along with detailed charts. But after 1433, China turned inward. The fleets were disbanded, and maritime exploration ended. The knowledge was suppressed and largely lost. Imagine if China had continued its expansion, world history could be completely different. Similarly, Arab sailors used monsoon winds to master the Indian Ocean, developing sophisticated knowledge of wind patterns and currents. They used a simple wooden device called a kamal to measure star altitudes and determine their latitude. A 1st century Greek sailing manual, the Periplus of the Erythraean Sea, details of the routes, ports, and trade goods across this vast ocean, showing just how interconnected the ancient world was. But as European powers colonized the region, this traditional knowledge was marginalized and eventually forgotten. Ancient maps revealed both what was known and what was imagined. The Ptolemaic world map, based on the 2nd century work of the geographer Ptolemy, dominated European thought for over 1,000 years. It was a monumental achievement of ancient geographers using a grid of latitude and longitude, but it also contained significant errors. It underestimated the size of the Earth and overestimated the size of Asia, which, ironically, encouraged Columbus to believe he could reach Asia by sailing west. The map shows a world that was both known and unknown, a blend of accurate measurement and educated guesswork. It reflects the limits of ancient knowledge, showing how even the most brilliant minds could be wrong. These stories of ancient navigation, from the Piri Reis map to Polynesian starfinders, all point to a common theme. Knowledge is fragile. Sophisticated systems of finding one's way across the globe were developed, perfected, and then lost, often due to secrecy, cultural disruption, or a simple change in priorities. Each time, humanity had to rediscover what was once common knowledge. These lost arts of navigation remind us that our ancestors were not primitive. They were master sailors, astronomers, and cartographers whose skills rival our own, even without our modern technology. Their achievements challenge our linear view of progress and show us how easily profound wisdom can vanish into the mists of time. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe for more journeys into our forgotten past. Ancient maps show us a world that was both known and imagined. Take the Ptolemaic world map. Based on the work of Claudius Ptolemy in the 2nd century AD, it was the most complete geographic picture of the ancient world, showing Europe, Asia, and Africa with surprisingly familiar shapes, even with some major distortions. Ptolemy was a genius. He set the prime meridian through the Canary Islands and divided the world into latitude and longitude coordinates, a system we still use. But his map wasn't perfect. He miscalculated the Earth's circumference, making it seem about 30% smaller. This one mistake might have changed history. It likely encouraged Christopher Columbus's, making him think Asia was much closer to Europe than it really was. For centuries, Ptolemy's work was lost to Europe, but it was preserved in the Byzantine Empire and by Arab scholars. When it finally reappeared in Europe in the 15th century, it sparked a revolution in map-making, but it also brought back those ancient errors. Meanwhile, in the Islamic world, knowledge was flourishing. The Tabula Rogeriana, created in 1154 by the Arab geographer Muhammad al-Idrisi for King Roger II of Sicily, was another masterpiece. This map, oriented with south at the top, showed the known world from the Atlantic all the way to China with incredible accuracy. Al-Idrisi compiled his map from traveler accounts, merchant stories, and earlier geographic works, showcasing the immense knowledge gathered through Islamic trade networks. Yet, this incredible map remained almost completely unknown in Europe for hundreds of years. This shows how fragmented geographic knowledge was. What was common knowledge in one culture could be a complete mystery in another. Ancient navigation was so much more than just drawing maps. It was a deep, intuitive understanding of the world, knowing weather patterns, reading ocean currents, and tracking seasonal changes. Sailors learned this knowledge the hard way, through experience, and often at a terrible cost. Shipwrecks were frequent, and many voyages ended in disaster. But the survivors brought back priceless information: which routes were safe, where to find fresh water, and which shores to avoid. This knowledge was power, and it was often kept secret. Venetian merchants fiercely guarded their trade routes to Asia. In the 15th century, Portuguese explorers kept their discoveries along the African coast, a closely held state secret to stay ahead of their rivals. When civilizations fell or trade routes were cut off, this fragile knowledge could simply vanish. And it wasn't just about knowledge, it was about infrastructure. Lighthouses, harbor markers, and coastal beacons were essential. The legendary Pharos of Alexandria, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, was a lighthouse soaring over 300 feet high, guiding ships into one of the busiest harbors on Earth. It stood for more than 1,500 years before earthquakes brought it down. Its very existence shows just how vital maritime trade was to ancient civilizations. This brings us to one of the most debated topics in history: pre-Columbian contact between the Old World and the Americas. We know for a fact that Vikings landed in North America around 1000 AD. D'Alonso Meadows' settlement proves it. But what about earlier voyages? Some researchers point to fascinating similarities between cultures, like pyramid building or mummification, as possible evidence. Then there's the strange case of cocaine and tobacco residues found in some Egyptian mummies plants native to the Americas. These findings are highly controversial, with many experts citing possible contamination. In 1947, Thor Heyerdahl's famous Kon-Tiki expedition proved that ancient balsa wood rafts could cross the Pacific from South America to Polynesia. He showed it was possible, but possibility isn't proof. The stark reality is that there's no clear sustained archaeological evidence of major pre-Columbian contact. The devastating exchange of diseases, crops, and animals that happened after 1492 suggests the two hemispheres were isolated for thousands of years. Still, the idea is tantalizing. Ancient sailors were incredibly skilled and adventurous. A ship blown off course by a massive storm could easily have made an accidental landing, leaving behind no obvious trace for us to find today. We get glimpses into this lost world through marine archaeology. The Antikythera shipwreck, discovered back in 1900, gave us the Antikythera mechanism, a kind of ancient computer, along with bronze statues and artifacts that completely changed our understanding of ancient technology. It makes you wonder, how many other shipwrecks are lying on the ocean floor holding secrets we've lost? Ancient ships carried more than just cargo. They carried texts, maps, and scientific instruments. When a ship sank, that knowledge went down with it. A perfect example is the Aluburan shipwreck, found off the coast of Turkey. Dating to around 1300 BC, it was like a floating Amazon warehouse of the Bronze Age. Its cargo came from all over: copper from Cyprus, tin from Afghanistan, amber from the Baltic, and ivory from Africa. This one ship reveals a world that was far more interconnected than we ever imagined. The loss of this knowledge had profound consequences. After the Roman Empire fell, trade in the Mediterranean collapsed. Routes that were once highways of commerce became dangerous and were forgotten. European maps from the Middle Ages were actually less accurate than ancient Roman ones, filled with mythical beasts and blank spaces marked here be dragons. The geographic knowledge Ptolemy compiled in the 2nd century didn't become widely available in Europe again until the 15th century. This is why the Great Age of Exploration was as much an age of rediscovery. European explorers were often retracing routes that other civilizations had known about for centuries. The Portuguese who sailed down the African coast were following paths Phoenicians had navigated 2,000 years earlier. Columbus's voyage came 500 years after the Vikings. Magellan's circumnavigation of the globe finally proved what the ancient Greeks had already theorized: the Earth is round. The success of this era was built on recovering and combining ancient knowledge, Ptolemy's maps, Arab astronomical charts, and new ship designs. But this expansion also came at a price. As Europeans explored, they often destroyed indigenous knowledge. The Spanish conquistadors burned ancient Maya books. Polynesian navigation traditions were disrupted and nearly lost. The sophisticated geographic knowledge of indigenous peoples, accumulated over generations, was often dismissed as primitive superstition. This triggered another massive wave of knowledge loss, one that affected cultures all over the world. Today, there's a race against time to recover some of what was lost. Researchers are working with indigenous communities to document traditional navigation techniques and environmental wisdom before they disappear forever. The revival of Polynesian voyaging is a powerful example. It shows that lost knowledge can be brought back, but it takes a dedicated effort. If the Polynesian voyaging society had waited just one more generation, there might not have been any traditional navigators left to teach the old ways. The story of ancient navigation reveals a repeating pattern in human history. Knowledge is gained, it's lost, and then it has to be rediscovered. The ancients knew far more than we often give them credit for. They crossed vast oceans, made sophisticated maps, and understood the world in complex ways. But this knowledge was fragile. When civilizations collapsed or trade routes were severed, that knowledge could vanish. We now live in an age of GPS and satellite imagery, where we can pinpoint our location anywhere on the planet. Yet we are still piecing together how ancient navigators accomplished their incredible feats. We're still finding ancient maps that hold clues we can't fully decipher. The courage and curiosity of those ancient sailors connect us to our own spirit of exploration. They ventured into the unknown, they mapped their world, and they found their way home, leaving a legacy of discovery that continues to inspire us to this day. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this journey into the past, please like and subscribe for more. In 1901, off the coast of the Greek island Antikythera, sponge divers made an incredible discovery inside a Roman-era shipwreck. Alongside statues and pottery, they found a corroded lump of bronze and wood. Initially overlooked, this artifact would turn out to be one of archaeology's greatest puzzles, the Antikythera mechanism. It was an ancient astronomical calculator, so advanced that nothing like it would be seen again for over 1,000 years. Dating back to around 100 BCE. The device consists of at least 30 intricate bronze gears, all housed in a wooden case about the size of a shoebox. A crank on the side, when turned, would set the gears in motion to display complex astronomical information. For decades, its purpose was a complete mystery. The corrosion made it almost impossible to understand how the gears worked together. Some even thought it must be a modern object that somehow ended up in an ancient wreck. How could the ancient Greeks have built something so complex? But as experts carefully cleaned and examined the artifact, its true sophistication became clear. X-ray scans revealed a breathtaking internal structure of interlocking gears. Inscriptions on its surface served as a user manual, describing astronomical cycles. This device could predict the positions of the sun, moon, and planets. It could forecast eclipses, track the 4-year cycle of the Olympic Games, and even account for the moon's irregular orbit, a feat of engineering that wouldn't be replicated until the 14th century. This raises a huge question. How did the ancient Greeks create such a thing? It required an incredible blend of advanced astronomy, mechanical engineering, and precision bronzeworking. The Antikythera mechanism is the proof that these weren't just stories. But if the ancient Greeks could build this, what else could they do? What other technologies have been lost to time? The mechanism represents a level of technical achievement we never thought possible for that era. It's not just a tool, it's a complex mechanical computer. This single discovery forces us to rethink everything we thought we knew about ancient technology. We imagine progress as a straight line, from simple to complex. The Antikythera mechanism shatters that idea, showing that ancient civilizations could reach incredible peaks of sophistication, only for that knowledge to be completely lost. So why did this amazing technology disappear? Maybe it was always incredibly rare and expensive, a luxury for a select few. When the Roman Empire declined, the wealthy patrons who funded such projects vanished, and with them, the market for these devices. This illustrates just how fragile knowledge can be. It's not enough to invent something. That knowledge has to be passed on, practiced, and valued. If any of those links break, the chain of progress is broken. Modern researchers have built working replicas of the mechanism using ancient techniques, and they work perfectly. This proves the original design was sound, but it also shows how difficult it was to make. The creator must have had a long tradition of mechanical expertise to draw from. Yet almost no other trace of this tradition survives. We do have hints from other sources. Hero of Alexandria, writing in the 1st century CE, described steam-powered engines, automatic temple doors, and even a vending machine for holy water. These weren't just ideas. He provided instructions for building them. But just like the Antikythera mechanism, the actual devices are gone. And it's not just Greek technology. Think of Damascus steel, the legendary metal of medieval swords, with its distinctive wavy pattern and unmatched strength. We still can't perfectly replicate it today. The secret was lost centuries ago. Or Roman concrete, which could set underwater and actually get stronger over time. The recipe was lost with the fall of the empire. What about Greek fire? The Byzantine Empire's secret naval weapon that could burn on water. The formula was a state secret, and it died with the empire. We see a pattern here. Highly specialized knowledge, held by only a few people. That was easily lost during times of war or economic collapse. The skills weren't written down or were passed on only through apprenticeship. When those lines of transmission were broken, the technology vanished. The Iron Pillar of Delhi in India, over 1,600 years old, has barely rusted. We still don't fully understand the ancient forging technique that made it so pure. The Lycurgus cup, a Roman glass goblet, changes color from green to red depending on the light. The Romans had somehow figured out how to embed nanoparticles of gold and silver into glass, a technique we only understood in the 20th century. These artifacts are messengers from a lost world, reminding us that our ancestors were brilliant and creative. They also serve as a warning. We might think our digital age is immune to this kind of knowledge loss, But how much of our own technology depends on a small number of experts or unwritten skills? The Antikythera mechanism survived by sheer luck. It reminds us that progress is not guaranteed. Knowledge is a flame that must be constantly tended and passed on, or it risks being extinguished, leaving future generations to wonder at the marvels we once created. Thanks for watching. If you found this fascinating, don't forget to like, share and subscribe for more journeys into the mysteries of the past. In 1936, an archaeologist digging near Baghdad found a curious clay jar. Inside was a copper cylinder and an iron rod, sealed with asphalt. He proposed a shocking theory. This was a primitive battery, made around 200 BCE. If true, it means people understood electricity 2,000 years before we thought. This Baghdad battery has been debated ever since. It's about 5 inches tall. If you fill it with an acid like vinegar, it could theoretically produce about 1 to 2 volts of electricity. And guess what? Replicas actually work. The design is a simple galvanic cell. But did ancient people really use these as batteries? And for what? Skeptics are quick to point out that we've found no ancient texts mentioning electricity, and no wires or other components needed to use it. Maybe they were just fancy scroll holders. But supporters have a different idea: electroplating. They think these batteries were used to coat objects with a thin layer of gold or silver. Some ancient artifacts seem to have coatings that could have been made this way, but it's still a hot debate. The truth is, we just don't know. The Baghdad battery could be a lost piece of ancient tech, or just a coincidence. Then we have the crystal skulls. These are human-like skulls, carved from quartz crystal, claimed to be ancient Aztec or Maya artifacts with mystical powers. The most famous one, the Mitchell Hedges skull, was supposedly found in a Maya ruin. Sounds amazing, right? Well, modern science tells a different story. Under a microscope, you can see tool marks from modern rotary cutters, not ancient hand tools. It turns out they were probably made in 19th century Germany. The British Museum and the Smithsonian both concluded they are modern fakes. They're beautiful works of art for sure, but they're not ancient mysteries. It's a good lesson. Extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence. Let's talk about the Dropa stones. The story goes that in 1938, stone discs were found in a cave in China. They supposedly had tiny hieroglyphs telling of an alien spacecraft that crash-landed 12,000 years ago. This story is everywhere in books about ancient mysteries. But there's a problem. There's zero credible evidence. No photos, no museum exhibits, no scientific papers. The whole thing seems to be a fictional story that someone started passing off as fact. But not all mysteries are hoaxes. Take the Phaistos disc, a clay disc from ancient Crete, about 3,700 years old. It's covered in stamped symbols arranged in a spiral. It looks like an early form of printing, thousands of years before Gutenberg, but we can't read it. The script is unlike any other known language. Is it a hymn, a game, a royal decree? We have no idea. Similar to that is the Voynich manuscript, a medieval book from the 15th century. It's written in a completely unknown script and filled with bizarre drawings of strange plants and astronomical charts. The world's best cryptographers have tried to crack it for centuries, with no luck. Is it an elaborate code, a lost language, or just a meaningless hoax? It remains one of history's greatest unsolved puzzles. Now let's fly over to Peru to see the Nazca lines. These are gigantic drawings etched into the desert floor. So big you can only really see them from the air. There are animals, plants, and geometric shapes. Were there runways for aliens? Messages to the gods? Modern research suggests they were probably ritual pathways, used in religious ceremonies over hundreds of years. You don't need lost tech to make them, just careful planning and a lot of work. The real mystery isn't how they were made, but why. What inspired a whole culture to create these massive artworks? Nearby, the walls of Sacsayhuaman are just as mind-boggling. The Inca built these walls with massive stones, some weighing over 100 tons, fitting them together so perfectly without any mortar that you can even slip a piece of paper between them. How did they do it with no wheels, iron tools, or large draft animals? Research suggests they used a combination of stone hammers, wooden levers, and incredible patience. They didn't need aliens. They were just brilliant engineers. Sometimes, a mystery has a simple explanation. The Coso artifact looked like a spark plug inside a 500,000-year-old rock. Turns out it was just a 1920s spark plug that got covered in minerals over a few decades. And the Klerksdorp spheres, supposedly man-made objects from 3 billion years ago. They're natural geological formations called concretions. Our brains love to see patterns, even when there aren't any. So, how do we tell a real mystery from a fake one? We need to be skeptical, but open-minded. We rely on science, clear evidence, and peer-reviewed research. When stories about artifacts only appear in sensational books but never in scientific journals, we should be cautious. But genuine mysteries like the Antikythera mechanism show us that ancient people were capable of incredible things. We shouldn't underestimate them. The study of the past is a journey. Some mysteries will be solved, while new ones will appear. These artifacts, whether explained or not, connect us to our ancestors. They show us human ingenuity, creativity, and our shared desire to understand the world and leave our mark on it. The past is complex, fascinating, and still full of surprises. We've journeyed for hours, exploring the mysteries of the ancient world, lost cities, impossible engineering, and forgotten knowledge that challenges our very understanding. What have we learned? That our ancestors were far more capable than we often imagine, and that knowledge itself is fragile, rising and falling with civilizations. The idea of Atlantis reminds us that even great civilizations can vanish. The pyramids demonstrate an engineering prowess that still baffles us today. Sites like Göbekli Tepe challenge our entire timeline of human development. Ancient peoples mastered astronomy, mathematics, and navigation to a degree that was lost and had to be painstakingly rediscovered. And the Antikythera mechanism proves that ancient technology could achieve a level of sophistication that seems almost impossible for its time. Perhaps the most important lesson is how easily knowledge can disappear. It doesn't just accumulate forever. It must be valued, preserved, and passed on. When societies collapse, when experts die, when texts are destroyed, knowledge vanishes. We see this pattern again and again. Roman concrete, Damascus, steel, Greek fire all represent knowledge that was lost, some of which we still can't replicate. This isn't just ancient history. Even today, traditional knowledge is disappearing as indigenous cultures change. In our digital age, we might feel immune, with everything stored on the cloud. But digital storage has its own vulnerabilities. File formats become obsolete. Data degrades and information can be lost. The ancient world teaches us humility. What we know today could become a mystery for future archaeologists if we aren't careful. But it also teaches us to be optimistic. Human ingenuity is incredibly resilient. When knowledge is lost, it can be rediscovered. Archaeologists uncovering forgotten sites, linguists deciphering ancient scripts, they are all part of humanity's ongoing conversation with its past. Each discovery connects us more deeply to our ancestors. We are the inheritors of millennia of their achievements and their mistakes. Their curiosity is our curiosity. Their drive to create something lasting is our drive. We are connected by our shared humanity. The mysteries that remain unsolved remind us that the past still holds secrets. What seems impossible today might be explained tomorrow, but some knowledge may be lost forever, and that's okay. The gaps are the unanswered questions that keep us curious, keep us searching. As you go about your day, think about the builders of the pyramids, the navigators crossing vast oceans, the craftsmen of the Antikythera mechanism. They were real people who dreamed, struggled, and hope to leave something for the future. We are those future generations. And now, we have the responsibility to understand their message, preserve their legacy, and add our own chapter to humanity's story. The echoes of the ancients are all around us. They speak of our potential, of the heights we can reach. They remind us that civilizations are fragile, but human creativity is resilient. Remember that you are part of this ongoing story. The questions you ask and the curiosity you maintain contribute to our collective understanding. The ancient world isn't dead, it lives on in every artifact, every ruin, and in our unending quest to understand where we came from. Thank you for joining this journey. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and continue to wonder.